Let me tell you a story most governments would rather keep buried. It's not mine, but I heard it from a man who had every reason to lie. And yet, his eyes told the truth. His name was Dr. Anton Lebedev. He worked for the Soviet military during the Cold War, one of the lead scientists behind an operation known only as Project 15. It was a psychological experiment meant to break the barrier between sleep and death. 5 subjects, prisoners condemned to die, were offered freedom in exchange for one thing: stay awake for 30 days straight. They were sealed inside a remote underground chamber. No clocks, no sunlight, just dim lamps and a constant haze of a new stimulant gas, something powerful, untested, and unstable. Everything was monitored, one-way glass, microphones, cameras in every corner, and for the first 4 days, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. They laughed, talked, argued about petty things. They ate their rations, did push-ups, even sang once or twice. But on the 5th day, that's when it started. The men stopped talking. They weren't sleeping, but they weren't communicating either. Instead, they began whispering, not to the cameras, not to each other, to something else. Dr. Lebedev described it as language without form. Mouths moved, but no one was close enough to hear. The microphones picked up soft static, rhythmic clicking, like fingers tapping on bone. Then, one of the men stood up and smeared his dinner across the glass. Not randomly, it was methodical. He covered the cameras, blocked the one-way mirror. After that, total silence. Days passed. No sound, no movement, no one ate, no one screamed, just silence. Until day 9. A voice crackled through the speaker system. Lebedev ordered them to respond. What came back chilled him. "We have found freedom. You may leave us now." By day 10, the oxygen levels inside the chamber seemed off. The gas was still flowing, but the sensors reported inconsistencies. It was as if something inside was consuming it. On day 11, they made the decision. Cut the gas, open the door, see what's left. When the stimulant was disabled, the screaming began, not from one man, not even 2. All 4 remaining subjects began howling, animalistic, feral. They begged for the gas to be turned back on. Then they started clawing at the walls, their own flesh, each other. By the time the steel door opened on the 15th night, what the soldiers found was indescribable. One subject was dead, his torso torn open, his organs were scattered, but untouched, neatly arranged as if displayed for admiration. 2 of the survivors were curled in opposite corners, skin shredded, muscle exposed, but eyes wide open, alert, conscious, grinning. The 4th, he stood in the center, still, smiling. No eyelids, no lips, torn away by his own hands. They tried to remove the survivors, but none of them complied. When the guards approached, one prisoner whispered something, barely audible. "Don't take us from the light." And then they attacked. It took 6 men to subdue the center subject. He fought without making a sound, ripped flesh from one soldier's neck with his teeth. Dr. Lebedev demanded sedation. When injected, the subject flatlined almost instantly. But just before his heart stopped, he smiled. "Sleep is death," he muttered. "We are beyond it now." The last 2 survivors were strapped down for surgery. Lebedev believed the gas had caused irreversible neurological changes. He wanted to know how they stayed awake. The autopsy never happened. One of the restrained subjects chewed through his own wrist. The other dislocated his shoulder, slipped from the cuffs, and slammed his head against the surgical tray until his skull cracked. Only one remained, the center subject, the smiling one. Lebedev demanded answers. "What are you?" he asked. The man stared back and said, "We are what you buried. The thing your mind forgets when your body sleeps. You created us the moment you turned off the light." Lebedev was silent. There is no going back. Every man has a door inside his mind. You opened it. You saw us. He grinned wider, blood dripping down his chin. Close it, and you die. The general overseeing the experiment gave the order to shoot. 1 bullet to the heart. The man didn't scream, he didn't bleed out. He just whispered, his last breath. "You'll dream of us. Every night. Every 15th night." They sealed the lab, burned every document, but not before Lebedev left. He defected years later, came to the West, and told me, why me? Because I used to have the same dream. A steel room, flashing lights, 5 silhouettes whispering to me from the dark, and every time I'd wake up in a cold sweat. On the 15th night of each month. For years, I thought it was just anxiety, insomnia, the cost of too much late-night horror reading, but now I know what it is. Something's knocking in the back of my mind, waiting for the gas to turn back on. And if you start dreaming of them too. If you ever wake up at 3:15 a.m. gasping for air, whispering things you don't remember, don't go back to sleep, because you brought something back with you. And it's awake now. I want to tell you a story that a young man named Kevin shared with me. A story he swore was true. Kevin was 19, bright-eyed and ambitious, traveling to Bath for a job interview. But instead of a new beginning, he found something far more sinister, and it all started with a teacup. Kevin arrived late that evening. He didn't know the area and figured he'd find a small place to stay. That's when he saw a house with a dim porch light and a crooked sign that read, "Bed and breakfast, vacancies." He rang the bell. A sweet-looking old woman opened the door almost instantly. "Oh dear, you must be freezing. Come in, come in." She told him she was just making tea, and of course, he said yes. Inside, the place was warm, too warm, and smelled of lavender, and something else. A sharp, bitter scent that he couldn't quite place. She poured him tea and sat across from him. "You remind me of my last 2 guests," she said, smiling. "Lovely boys, Christopher and Richard." Kevin froze. He recognized those names. 2 university students who had vanished recently. Same town, no leads. He glanced at the cabinet behind her. 2 porcelain figurines sat inside, both young men. Disturbingly lifelike. Too lifelike. Kevin brought the teacup to his lips and hesitated. The smell. That bitterness. It was stronger now. He faked a sip, smiled politely. The woman leaned forward. "Drink up, dear," she whispered. "It's a very special blend." Kevin pretended to be tired, said he needed rest. She guided him upstairs to a small, spotless room. There was something unnatural about how clean it was, like no one had ever actually lived there. "Sleep tight, my dear," she said, closing the door behind her. Kevin locked it. Fast, he checked his phone. No signal. Tried the window. Nailed shut. The dizziness kicked in. He had swallowed a tiny bit. Enough. He searched the room, desperate to stay awake, and found something under the floorboard. A wooden box. Inside, 2 wallets. IDs. Christopher Hall. Richard Vane. That's when he heard the sound. Creak. Slow footsteps on the stairs. She was coming. He grabbed a coat hanger. Stood behind the door, heart pounding. The knob turned, then stopped. She didn't come in. He didn't wait. He kicked the door open and ran. She was standing at the bottom of the stairs, holding another cup of tea. "You drank it," she said, voice low. "You're mine now." He pushed past her, kicked open the front door, and sprinted into the freezing night. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until he reached a gas station and called the police. They found the house, the teacups, the porcelain dolls, and in the basement, what Kevin had feared the most, 4 preserved bodies. Christopher and Richard were among them, and 2 others, never even reported missing. The woman? She was just smiling, calm as ever. Kevin survived because he didn't finish that teacup. He told me he still smells that bitter scent sometimes. In cafes, on buses, in dreams. A reminder that death once came in porcelain. Be careful where you stay, and if someone offers you tea, you might want to say no. You know, sometimes evil doesn't come with claws or a scream. Sometimes it's silent, patient, invisible. It waits. And then it drains you. Not your blood, but your will, your identity, your soul. I want to tell you a story that a man named Alain once told me. A story he never meant to share. And honestly, I wish he hadn't. Because once you hear it, you start to wonder, what if something's already attached to you, and you just haven't noticed yet? Alain was a writer, reclusive, methodical, sharp-minded, the kind of person who didn't believe in ghosts or demons. He moved into an old villa on the outskirts of Rouen, a place wrapped in forest silence and fog off the Seine. He was working on a new book, one he said would finally make his name. The first few weeks, things were calm. He kept a journal, walked every morning, drank his coffee on the balcony overlooking the river. But one morning, Alain woke up with his sheets completely soaked, not just with sweat, but cold, clammy dampness. He thought he might be getting sick, but it kept happening. He told me, I felt like something had been leaning over me while I slept. The strange thing was, nothing was ever out of place. No signs of entry, no broken locks. Just that awful exhaustion. Like something had taken a piece of him every night. Then came the dreams, except they weren't dreams, not really, more like episodes. Sleep paralysis, he assumed. Alain described it like this. I'd wake up unable to move. My eyes open, my breath stuck in my throat, and I'd feel it. The pressure, as if something invisible had climbed on top of me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel the air shift. The cold, and then my chest would burn, not with pain, with fear. This went on for nights, weeks. He stopped writing. He stopped leaving the house. He tried everything, therapists, priests, even sleeping with all the lights on. But nothing helped. One night, Alain decided to stay up, to face it. He set up a camera in his room, left a notebook on the nightstand, and sat in bed with the lights off. He remembered nothing the next morning, just waking up tired as usual. But the notebook had a single line scribbled in his handwriting. It knows I can see it now. Alain showed me the footage. I wish I'd never watched it. The camera sat still most of the night. But around 3:14 a.m., something bizarre happened. The video became fuzzy. Not static, but like the air itself was distorting. A shift in the shadows near the corner of the room. Not a shape. More like the light bent wrong. Then Alain, asleep in bed, began thrashing violently. His body arched, his mouth opened in a silent scream, and then he stopped, frozen. The distortion in the corner faded. He didn't remember any of it. Alain said it felt like something was living inside the house with him, not just haunting, residing. He tried burning sage, got a blessing from the local church, moved the bed to another room. Nothing changed, and then things escalated. Alain stopped eating. He'd talk to himself, whispered things when he thought no one was listening. He once called me in the middle of the night, whispering so quietly I could barely hear him. He said, "It's drinking me. Not my blood. My thoughts. My feelings. I'm less me every day." I begged him to leave the house, to stay with someone. But he refused. "If I leave, it comes too," he said. "It's not in the house anymore. It's in me." He kept a journal of the changes, handwriting that shifted every few days, entries he didn't remember writing. Some pages were in a language neither of us recognized. One page just said, over and over, "Je suis deux." I am two. He was splitting. Or rather, something else was sharing his body, and that is when he snapped. I visited him one last time. He was barely human, pale, trembling, his voice dry like ash. He sat in a chair by the window, staring at nothing. "You know what the worst part is?" he asked. "It doesn't hate me. It doesn't torment me for fun. It just Feeds. That night, he locked himself in his study. The next morning, the police broke down the door. He was gone. No body. Just the camera, the notebook, and a single sentence scrawled on the wall. Now it's hungry again. I don't know what Alain encountered, but I believe him. Every word. Because ever since I read his notebook, I haven't been sleeping well either. Sometimes I wake up with a weight on my chest. Sometimes I see the shadows bend at the corner of my room. And last night, I found a sentence on my bathroom mirror, written in fog. Je suis deux.